Most of us don't set out to build a bad reputation at work, obviously. In fact, many people don't realize anything is wrong until they're already being overlooked, second-guessed, or quietly left out of important conversations. And by the time you notice it, a story has already formed about who you are, how you work, and what people expect from you. Not because you're careless, not because you lack ability, but because reputation is shaped in small moments over time, often without us noticing. And if you're not paying attention to that story that's being formed, you're probably also not deliberately influencing it. If you do have a bad reputation and people tell a story about you that's not aligned with what you want it to be, it's likely not because you don't work hard since becoming aware of it, or that you don't stay professional in order to course correct the reputation. It changes when you become intentional about how you show up deliberately to change that reputation. So today we're going to talk about how to do this, not just by doing a bit better, but by intentionally recreating a new reputation. My name is Ramona Shaw, and I'm the host of the Manager Track podcast. So think about it. Right now, somewhere in your company, someone is making a decision about you without you in the room. Your name comes up and someone says, yeah, but they're a little bit difficult to work with. I know they're good, but we don't quite work that well together. I'd rather have someone else on a project. With that, maybe an opportunity passes you by because the team or a person has concerns about you and your behaviors. And you likely have no idea that this is happening, or at least not until it's already too late. In fact, research from the Journal of Applied Psychology shows that negative impressions stick 5 times longer than positive ones. So once people form a story about who you are, that story becomes a filter. They interpret your good behavior almost as suspicious, and your behavior is now measured through that filter and may affirm what they already believe. Most people try to fix a bad reputation by working twice as hard, which, by the way, doesn't change the story, right? It just makes you exhausted. Or apologizing constantly, which can make you look guilty of things you might have done or might not have done. So if you're like, I'm so sorry, I know I used to be always late, or I know I used to be so emotional, or I got really mad at this, I know I'll do better and I'm sorry. That all sounds nice and good and like it's moving in the right direction. But when you do that too much, it actually starts to add to the bad reputation, because what people really want to see is just a change in behavior. Another way that people deal with bad reputations at work is that they're avoiding the people who don't like them. And when you avoid those people and they then don't have better experiences with you, you actually let the story grow and stay unchallenged in sort of your absence and the vacuum of any interactions. None of that works, because in a way you're then treating your reputation like it's about performance, but it's not. Your reputation, anyone else's reputation, is about narrative control. So the question really is, who gets to tell the story about who I am? Is it them or is it you? Today I'm going to show you why bad reputation sticks even when you're doing everything right, so to speak, the exact moment you need to rewrite your story and how to do it, the 4 psychological forces working against you and how to flip them, and then the tiered response when someone tries to trap you in your old story. Plus, we'll talk about the only framework that actually works for rebuilding trust when people have already written you off. And this isn't just theory. This is what works when your back is against the wall and it seems like everyone's already decided who you are. Now, one more thing to bear in mind with reputations. Reputations don't tend to fade with time. They kind of harden. Like, think back of people that you knew 5-10 years ago. It's likely that whatever reputation they had then is what you assume their reputation is today, especially if you haven't seen them or haven't had a lot of interaction with them. We don't really give people the benefits of the doubt and assume that they've changed, although chances are high that they have. But we work and operate under the assumption that whatever reputation they built back then, or that I thought that they had back then, is what is also true today. Even when someone I've been in contact with or worked with over the last couple of years, we continue to look at them through the lens that we formed a while back. And it actually takes a lot of work for that lens to be changed so that we give them truly an honest chance to build a new and a different reputation. But when someone does that intentionally and is aware of those limitations and now does work on their reputation a lot more intentionally, will get there so much faster. Because every day that you stay silent, the story about you becomes more solid, more maybe even obvious, or just more unchallenged. Think about it this way. When you first messed up on something, let's say you blew up in a meeting, or you missed a really critical deadline, or you threw someone under the bus, people were surprised. Wow, I didn't see that one coming from them. I didn't think they were going to do that, or I didn't think they were going to say that. I didn't think they were going to be so emotional about it. That's the first time around. The second time and the third time around, this is now a pattern. It's multiple dots on a chart. We're forming a pattern. And it starts to become who you are and how people describe you and what they think about you. And once something becomes who you are, the brain does something really fascinating, but also something kind of cruel. It starts to look for evidence that confirms it, and it ignores evidence that contradicts it. In psychology, this is called the confirmation bias, and it's one of the most powerful forces shaping your reputation right now. In a classic study by Snyder and Swan, researchers told participants that they were about to meet someone who was either an introvert or an extrovert. Then they asked participants to interview that person. Now, here's what happened. People who thought they were meeting an introvert asked questions like, what do you find uncomfortable about social situations? Do you prefer being alone? But people who thought they were meeting an extrovert asked, what do you love about meeting new people? How do you energize a room? Same person with the same resume, that person was supposed to show up identical across all of these meetings. But the person who expected an introvert versus the person who expected an extrovert asked very different questions. And guess what? The introvert came across as introverted and the extrovert came across as extroverted, although the person in the room was acting the same way no matter what. So their assessment or that labeling was not because of who they actually were, but because of the questions they were asked. Now apply that to your reputation. Once you're labeled difficult or unreliable or not a team player, people start asking you questions, consciously or not, that pull out behavior that confirms that label. If you push back on an idea, they think, see, still super defensive. You stay quiet in a meeting, I think they're passive aggressive. You work late to fix something, they're probably trying to cover up another mistake. You literally cannot win because the story is filtering the evidence, not the other way around. And here's the part that makes it even harder. Your mistakes were maybe loud and public, but your growth is quiet and private. So when you messed up, everyone saw it. Let's say the meeting where you lost your temper, the project that failed spectacularly, the email where you said something you shouldn't have. All of that was public. But your growth, it happens in conversations with mentors or friends, in coaching conversations that no one else ever sees or hears about. Late nights working on yourself or sort of course correcting behaviors or patterns. So in their minds, the old you with that reputation is totally vivid, reasoned, and still real, versus that new you that you're starting to experience is invisible. And to them, it's maybe even theoretical or just unproven. And this is what psychologists Tversky and Kahneman called the availability heuristic. Basically, we judge how likely something is based on how easily we can remember examples of it. Your past mistakes, super easy to remember. Your quiet improvements, they're not even being registered. That's why you can't outperform a bad reputation in silence, sort of behind the scenes. You have to make your change visible, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. You have to overcome the availability heuristic and the confirmation bias. But before we get to how, you also need to understand one more thing about how reputations actually work. Because most people with bad reputations make one fatal mistake. They let other people define the narrative, and then they spend all their energy defending against it. When someone says, hey, you're not a team player, you might say, yes, I am. I've been really collaborative lately, but you just lost. The reason is that you accepted their frame, and now you're sort of on trial trying to prove your innocence. It's really hard to win by defending yourself. Like, you're in the defense. Think about a soccer game, whatever, right? In the defense, you protect yourself from not losing, but you're likely not winning. So the more that you defend, the guiltier you look. And the more you explain, the weaker you sound. Hey, but remember last week I picked up this project, or I volunteered for that task that no one else did. That sounds now defensive. So what's the alternative? The alternative is to name the story first, where you take control of the narrative before anyone else can use it against you. I worked with a VP. Let's call her Maya, made up name. She had a reputation for being abrasive and kind of hard to work with. Was it fair? Partially. I mean, she'd been aggressive early in her tenure. She burned some bridges. And now every time she spoke up in meetings, people interpret it as Maya's being difficult again. Now, all of this came out when the company was doing 360 assessments. And so she started to realize, oh, I have a bad reputation. People think I'm too aggressive, too abrasive. When I feel I am just stating my opinions and I'm being vocal and unafraid. So what she did is she apologized to people individually, especially those where she felt they probably had those negative experiences with her. She also started to quiet down in leadership meetings. She worked hard to prove herself, to reframe her messaging, and she would call out, look, I want to really be conscious to not sound abrasive here, and so I have to be mindful with my words. She used the feedback on being abrasive as a way to then explain herself. And every time she said that and did those things, her reputation actually kind of got worse. So at the next leadership meeting, before the meeting even fully kicked off, Maya said this, hey, before we get into it, I want to name something. About 6 months ago, when we did the 360 assessment, I was not the leader I needed to be. I was defensive. I prioritized being right over being effective. I was abrasive, and I damaged trust with some of you. I've spent the last 6 months working on that, actively and intentionally. Now, I'm not asking you to forget what happened, but I'm asking you to watch what I do next and to judge me on that. If I slip back into old patterns, today in our leadership meeting or any time in the future, call me out on it. I will own it. But I am not the same person I was 6 months ago, and I'm going to prove that through my actions, not just through apologies. Now, what did she just do? She named her own story before anyone else could use it against her. She didn't defend herself. She didn't minimize what happened, make excuses, add apologies, be quiet in that leadership meeting. Instead, she acknowledged the truth of what happened. She took ownership of how she showed up and of her growth. And she gave them permission to hold her accountable, which may have made them feel a bit more powerful instead of suspicious. But most of all, she shifted the conversation from who she was to who she is becoming. And with that new frame, with that move, In that leadership meeting, what do you think the other participants were looking for? Were they looking for her with that filter on of like confirming that she was abrasive and that she wasn't listening and that she was defensive? Or were they now wired to look for all the times and the moments when she showed up as a better leader than she used to be? It's the second, because that new frame is now what's present in their minds. They were now looking for evidence of her growth, not evidence of her past reputation. So to summarize this process, first you change the behavior. You do this privately, quietly for a few months if necessary. Then you name the old story and you claim the new one. This is when you change the frame. You publicly and clearly declare what you're about to do going forward. Then you let your actions speak louder than your words. You really follow through. Many people will try to do step 2 without doing step 1. They realize they have a bad reputation. They decide they don't want to have the bad reputation. They decide that they want to make some changes. But before any changes were made, they're declaring that they're now a new leader. But behavioral change doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And so if you're not quite ready yet, but you're already declaring it, it's going to erode trust whenever you fall back into these old traps, which is very likely to happen. Now, if you've already spent a couple of months building up new behaviors, ideally working with a mentor, a coach, or even a therapist, but someone who helps you with that behavioral change. And only then is when you declare. And once you get some traction and you feel confident that you are not going to fall back into old traps very often, it could still happen, but it's unlikely to. That is when you change the frame and state so publicly. Now, when your reputation is damaged and someone brings it up, directly or through sort of a passive-aggressive comment, you have 4 different ways to respond. And the ones who rebuild their reputation the fastest, they operate at level 4. But let's go through all of them. First, this is hide. You avoid anyone who remembers your old story, anyone who gave you the feedback. You might skip meetings, you transfer teams if it got really bad. You hope that you stay invisible long enough that people will forget, right? You will get yourself out of projects. You will do other things, but try to avoid those people who raise the issue. Now, what people learn is they're ashamed, and they're probably still also the same person. The story grows worse in your absence. So that's level 1, is to hide. Level 2 is to defend. You argue with everyone who questions you. Someone hints at your past and you immediately jump in. Hey, that's not fair. I've changed. You're not giving me credit. I haven't done it last time around. Or look when I did this. People again learn that you're defensive, probably because you haven't actually changed. The more that you defend, the more you confirm their suspicion. And you might even sound like someone in denial. Level 3 now is to over-apologize. So we're apologizing for everything constantly, right? You bring up your past mistakes unprompted. You say, I'm trying to get better and not being late. You keep saying, I'm sorry, even when you haven't done anything wrong. And you'll act like you're on probation, but forever. And then people start to worry that they can't really trust you. You've made your past, and you keep iterating that same story, that your past is the thing, is the narrative, and may still be your reputation. And then level 4, and this is where we want to operate at, is to own and redirect. You acknowledge the past clearly, then redirect to the present and the future, all at the same time, right? This is when the same example with the VP earlier. Don't hide it, don't defend it, you don't drown in it. Instead, you name it, you own it, and you move past it in one clean motion, a reframe. You're right, I was overly focused on results and didn't pay enough attention to how you all are doing. I've spent the last few months really assessing why this happened and fixing it. Here's what's different. The leader I am today and will be in the future is not only focused on results, but also on the people creating those results. Because whether you saw this or not in the past, it does matter to me. I do care about you. And I won't let my drive for results blind me to what's going on with the team. We will check in more regularly. We'll have career conversations. We will stick to our bi-weekly one-on-ones unless there is an emergency. All of those things that you plan to do. Then you can say, judge me on what happens next. Similar approach to the example with Maya earlier. People learn that you're self-aware, that you've done the work, and maybe that you've actually changed. In addition, you've taken away their power, so to speak, to expose you because you exposed yourself first. You shifted the conversation from who you were to who you are becoming, right? You are now creating the frame and the narrative. I'm going to add here one more example. If you're in a meeting and you're talking about a new project that you're going to lead and someone makes this passive aggressive comment, saying like, hey, good luck with that. I hope it goes better than the last project. You could say nothing and just ignore it. This is kind of the hide approach, right? You could also defend yourself, level 2, and say, hey, that's not fair. That last project failed not just because of me, but failed because there were so many reasons outside of my control. It really wasn't just me. Or number 3, you would be overly apologizing. I think about it all the time. I promise I'll do better this time around. Or you could use level 4, which is to own and redirect, and be pretty calm and direct and say, you're right, that project didn't go well, and I own my part in that. I've learned a lot since then, and this time, here's what I'm going to do differently. Let's focus on that. Pause and let it land. Now, here's one more interesting research on dominance and social status, and we've covered that actually in our last episode on how new leaders build trust fast. So if you haven't listened to that one, go check out that episode. It's number 298. So that research on dominance and social status consistently shows that people who display low emotional reactivity and high certainty are perceived as higher status, even when they're factually wrong. So in a study by Anderson and Kilduff in 2009, researchers put people in small groups and had them work on tasks together. The people who acted more confident and assertive, even when they weren't actually more competent, were quickly seen as leaders and given more influence. Because confidence signals competence to our brains. We're wired to follow the person who seems most sure of themselves, especially in ambiguous situations. Now I want to bring that piece of research back into this conversation because it applies to reputation repair as well. When someone questions whether you've changed, you have 2 options. Defend yourself emotionally, your voice goes up, you talk faster, you start listing all the ways that you've improved, and you sound desperate. In their brain, they hear this person is unsure because they have to defend themselves. That's option 1. Option 2, acknowledge calmly low emotional reactivity and in a confident way, and you redirect. Your voice stays leveled, you speak slower than normal, you state facts without the emotion. And that helps you sound certain and calm and confident. And so someone else's brain is now picking up, this person is solid, they moved on, maybe I should too. So it's not just about the words, but also about the delivery. Calm, brief, certain means trustworthy. Frantic, long-winded, defensive, suspicious. So that's why the whole own and redirect response works so well, because you're not just changing the narrative, you're also signaling through your tone and pace that you're in fact a different person now. Now, the biggest challenge when you have a bad reputation is what I call the reputation gaslighting. It sounds like you always do this, you haven't changed at all, everyone knows that you're ... These are vague, sweeping statements designed to keep you trapped in your old story. So here's what to do with this. Don't take the bait. When someone hits you with you always or you never, your instinct is to either defend yourself with a list of counterexamples or to collapse and apologize for everything. Both are wrong. Instead, pause, take a deep breath. Don't react immediately. Instead, step 2 now, acknowledge without accepting. Hey, I hear that that's your experience of me. I'm not agreeing with that. I'm also not disagreeing. I'm just acknowledging that they believe it. This disarms them without surrendering your own ground. And then step 3, you can separate that past from your presence. You can say, hey, this is true. I, insert behavior, used to be late a lot. I used to skip meeting. I used to cancel meetings. I used to not really think about the team, but about myself first. I've been working on that, and here's what I've changed. Now, you've heard me say the same example 3 times, and I hope it really clicks of what not to do and what to do and in which way to do it. And in those moments where we have like this reputational gaslighting, you can add at the end a bit of evidence or almost a bit of a power move. You could ask, what would you need to see from me to believe that I've changed? Now, you've put the ball in their court. You made them define success, and you shifted away from defending the past to really design the future and to have them contribute to that. If they can't answer it, then the whole conversation will probably end. But if they can answer it, now you know exactly how to best interact with that person in order to rebuild intentionally your reputation and turn that around. If they can, I hear that's your experience. It's true, I missed deadlines in the past. I wasn't managing my time really well and I let people down. I've been working on that, and in the last 3 months, I've delivered every project on time. What would you need to see from me going forward to trust that that's real and reliable? Clean, clear, really hard to argue with. Also, not insecure, not overly vulnerable, because not defensive, not emotional. Now, as we're talking about this, what's important is that you can really only rebuild your reputation as fast as your own self-respect allows. So if you're secretly believing that you are the person that they say you are, if you're still carrying shame about who you used to be, if you don't actually believe you've changed, you'll know it, you'll smell it, they'll smell it. And it's going to be really hard to change your reputation. Real reputation repair starts with internal work, not the external performance, right? In our coaching engagements, we do help leaders reach the next level, really up-level their performance, but we also help leaders rebuild not just their reputation, but also their identity. It's working on clearing the shame and self-doubt that may hold you back. It's about building the inner authority that makes external opinions less powerful. And it's designing a career where you are not dependent on one company's judgment. If that resonates, check out the link to our leadership strategy calls in the show notes. In those calls, we look at your individual situation, what the best path is to move forward, and how we might be able to support you in that. But no pressure, it's a lot of value in order for you to walk away with a clear strategy. To really understand why reputation is so hard to change, you also need to understand something psychologists discovered decades ago. We don't see reality. We see our interpretation of reality. And once we form an interpretation, we defend it like our life depends on it. In 1954, 2 psychologists did a study that's become legendary. They showed students from 2 rival colleges a recording of a football game between their schools. Same game, same footage, same place. Then they asked which team committed more fouls. The students from each school were convinced the other team had played dirtier. They weren't lying. They genuinely saw different games. Because their loyalty, their identity, shaped what they paid attention to and how they interpreted what they saw. This ties right into the confirmation bias that we've covered earlier. In regards to your reputation, if you're trying to overcome a negative reputation, know that this window is probably open right now. But every day that you stay silent, someone else is telling the story for you. So this is the time to act. If this video or episode was valuable, subscribe to the Manager Track podcast and share it with someone who might be stuck in their old reputation or doesn't know how to get out of this. Thanks so much for being here. We'll be back next week. Bye for now. If you enjoyed this episode, then check out 2 other awesome resources to help you become a leader people love to work with. This includes a free masterclass on how to successfully lead as a new manager. Check it out at arcova.org/masterclass. The second resource is my best-selling book, The Confident and Competent New Manager: How to Quickly Rise to Success in Your First Leadership Role. Check it out at arcova.org/books or head on over to Amazon and grab your copy there. You can find all those links in the show notes down below.